Okay, so in the previous part, we studied about the short history of Libya just before the independence from Italy. Okay, so after the independence, what happens? For few years, it was taken care by England and France, and then finally, what happens? The king takes over. Okay, the king was so partial; he was only supporting some families, and then he was simply neglecting all the other affairs of the state. Okay, then what happens in the late 1950s? They discover oil resources, natural gas, natural resources in Libya, and that changes the whole economy of the country become a rich country. Okay, right. Now in this situation, what happens now? Youth, they are waking up, they want to use all the revenues that they earn from oil natural resources for the development of the country. Okay, king is not ready. Then what happens? The military coup takes place by this general you see in the picture. So he is the Muammar Gaddafi, as a young general, army chief. Okay, so Gaddafi is known as Gaddafi, Muammar Gaddafi. Okay, so this particular man with support from, okay, so he's a young Gaddafi, and you see here, so he is an army. Now he becomes an army general, and then if you look at the way you see him now, like a king. Okay, so he becomes a dictator. See how a power can, you see here, now he is like a king. Okay, this is example of how a power can change, a person, right? Okay, so now we will move on to the lesson. Now what happens? So finally what happens? Muammar Gaddafi takes control of uh, Libya. Okay, and he establishes free officers movement. Okay, so this movement becomes so powerful. They are full of army men, and therefore King Idris had no chance of pushing through his agenda. So what happens? Finally he abandons his throne, and then he flees from Libya. Okay, finally the monarchy was ended, and Gaddafi declared new socialist Libyan Arab Republic. So he establishes a party called Socialist Libyan Arab Republic Party. Okay, now army gives full support to Gaddafi. Okay, under the leadership of Revolutionary Command Council. So this council mostly consists of the army. Okay, so it is this council that begins to rule Libya under the leadership of the person whom you see here, Muammar Gaddafi. Okay, right. Now Gaddafi was doing very well in the beginning. You see here the progress and development in Libya. Okay, he was doing very well in the beginning. As a young leader, he was so powerful. He stood against the other big rich countries like US. Okay, he never ever subdued to the powers of US and other European rich nations who are militarily who are very powerful in their military. Okay, in the economy and so on. Okay, because he knows that his country is a rich country, and they can become as powerful as the so-called first world nation. Okay, right. Now what happens? Now this new government took many important steps that led to Libya's rapid development. Libya was developing very fast soon after the ousting of monarchy. However, despite this, few rich and powerful families allied to the government continued to exercise control over the country's oil resources. Still, what happens? Even though the country was prospering, still there were rich families who became so close to the government, Gaddafi, and they were controlling the natural resources, oil resources, trade, and industry. They gained control of the government controlled oil companies. Okay, just like I don't want to tell you the names of those two big bosses we have in India. The same thing is happening in Libya. Okay, what's happening? The military government used oil revenues to launch many programs for welfare. In the beginning, they, as the youth were demanding, the government in the beginning was making use of the revenues from oil to launch many programs for the welfare of the people. Okay, mostly the people whom you find in Libya, they are all nomadic people, who don't have any proper house. They move from one place to another place. Okay, so there were so many tribes. Okay, so to uplift the life situations of this nomadic tribe, the revenues from oil and natural resources were used. Okay, so these nomadic tribes were allotted irrigated agricultural land so that they could live a settled life. Okay, and then they were also given free primary education and free medical facilities. So the healthcare system is slowly being um, strengthened in Libya. Okay, and Gaddafi made military service compulsory for all the Libyans. All the Libyans should compulsorily undergo the military service. That was imposed upon all the youth. Okay, both men and women. He ensured that women had equal status in society as men and formulated many laws for their benefit. Okay, so Gaddafi also did a good thing of uplifting the women. Okay, the women empowerment we see here under his regime. Legally, no man was permitted to have more than one wife. So he brings a kind of moral change. Though in his personal life we don't find much of a talk of morality, but still in the society he wanted to propose a kind of moral life. That's exactly what we see. Exactly what we see uh, with him. Okay, so from the time Gaddafi came to power in 1969 to till 2011, these welfare schemes saw an average life expectancy of the people increase from 50 years to 77 years. So before the independence, before the discovery of the natural resources during the time of monarchy, um, the life expectancy of the people was just 50 years. It was just 50 years. But after Gaddafi took over and after he brought in reforms, their life expectancy increased from 50 years to 77 years, something tremendous. Then the country's 30 lakh population was provided free medical facilities, free education, and he was giving subsidy for new houses. Okay, now what happened? Important change that he brought in the society was freedom and equality of women. In the beginning, during the time of monarch, women were not allowed. They should always wear burqa. Okay, they should not come out of their house. Okay, it was so strict. But after he took over, everything totally changed. Okay, he brought equality of women. They now had a right to start their own business. Women can start their own business. They can own their own property and work in the government jobs. In the year 2010, Libya's male-female literacy rate was 90 percentage. Okay, Libya, we could say, was first in the country. Okay, with the literacy, with the economy, and so on. Okay, the country occupied a leading position in the world, the whole of Africa, in the social welfare. In the social welfare, Libya was the first African country. They became very first. Right, even the economy was competing with the economy of great giants like US and Russia and other European countries. Okay, so even see even taking inspiration from Europe, no, European Union, Gaddafi also wanted to form their own African Union. Okay, you just imagine if they had formed African Union, African countries would have been richer. They would have been rich countries just like Europe and another thing. Okay, it is here that the problem begins. So this period of development in Libya saw the emergence of new middle class. Okay, now middle class, meaning of middle class. Okay, right, I don't have to explain to you who are the middle class. So this development saw the emergence of new middle class. The government established People's Council. Okay, they established People's Parliament, People's Council, to encourage its citizens to participate actively in the administrations of the country. Okay, so it also established a legislative assembly in the central government. So in the beginning, Gaddafi was a staunch Democrat. Okay, he always wanted to involve people in the government affairs, in the running of the country. But uh, Gaddafi and RCC had very little faith in democratic institutions. As years passed on, as a young leader, he was so energetic. He wanted to bring so many reforms. He wanted to uplift the life of the people. But as a year passes, as he in a way get matured, his whole idea of democracy changes. Okay, so Gaddafi and RCC had very little faith in democratic institutions. What happens? The members of the Legislative Assembly and Council had to accept the writ of the RCC. Okay, so Revolutionary Command Council. So people have to accept whatever changes they bring. Okay, even democratically elected people should listen to the government, listen to their leader Gaddafi and his party. They could not take their own decision. They had no say. They lost their voice. That is why the people began losing faith in these councils. Finally, what happened? Slowly, people began losing faith in the council. And any leader who appeared to pose a political challenge was suppressed. Anyone who says otherwise, thinks otherwise, he was suppressed. His voice was destroyed. So people did not have freedom to form their own organizations. Now was an independent media permitted to flourish. Okay, so finally everything was controlled by one man, Gaddafi. Okay, so with that we see how it all began as the emergence of democracy from monarchy, but slowly it turns out to be a kind of dictatorship. Okay, right now with this phase of dictatorship, what happens to the economic development and social welfare? We will see that in the next video. Thank you.